It's the light.
Okay, guys, we're about to get going, so we'll start the meeting. It is now 7 p.m. This is On Sound City Council. It's January 18th. Tonight we're started at 6:15 in a closed session. Both the closed and open sessions are being conducted with electronic participation due to the emergency declaration made by the province last week. Joining us in council chambers is Councillor Dodd and Councillor Gregg. City Manager Tim Simmons, our City Clerk and Deputy Clerk. All other council, Kate is actually, Ms. Allen's actually in the room to do her presentation in a minute. All other councillors and staff are joining us via video. Those of us in the council chambers completed a screening form, are appropriately distanced, and are wearing masks for additional protection. I would like to remind those of you who are joining the meeting from home to keep your microphones on mute unless you're speaking. When council or staff members wishes to speak, please speak up and introduce yourself so those listening know who is speaking. For each vote, I will ask each councillor whether they are in favor or opposed to that, so those at home can hear how each member is voting. Unless a recorded vote is requested, each person. For any councillor present through video that declares a pecuniary interest, the clerk will place you in a virtual lobby during the discussion of the item and readmit you to the meeting at the appropriate time. So reporting out of our closed session that started at 6:15. During the closed session, council reviewed minutes from a closed session meeting of council held on November 30th, 2020, and minutes from a closed session of the Owen Sound DIA Improvement Area Board, DIA, meeting held on February 12th, 2020. Council discussed one matter regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual respecting board and committee public appointments. Direction was provided to staff. Council also discussed one matter regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, labor relations or employee negotiations, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege respecting a city position, and no direction was given. So we're down to number 4, and I call for additional business. Is there anyone in staff that has anything to add?
Mr. Mayor, there's no additional business.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, any additional business? Councillor Gregg?
I have one item relating to the official plan draft.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing no one putting up their hands, I will have a couple of items to get to. It looks like, I think some of these are going to get wiped out as we go along, but right now I've got about 6 different comments, but I think they're going to shrink as we go on. At number 5, declaration of interest. Any councillor have any declaration of interest? And I'm seeing none. Number 6, confirmation of the council minutes from November 30th.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gregg, that the minutes of the closed session of the regular council meeting held on November 30th, 2020, as printed, be adopted.
And so to call that question, either in favor or opposed, Councillor Dodd?
In favor.
Councillor Gregg?
In favor.
Councillor Hamley?
In favor.
Councillor Kepke?
In favor.
Councillor Merton?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary?
In favor.
Councillor Tamming?
In favor.
Councillor Thomas?
In favor.
Good, that's carried. Minutes of the regular meeting held on December 14th, 2020. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gregg, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on December 14th, 2020, as printed, be adopted.
And all in favor, Councillor Dodd.
In favor.
Councillor Gregg.
In favor.
Councillor Hamley.
In favor.
Councillor Kepke.
In favor.
Councillor Merton.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
In favor.
Councillor Tamming.
In favor?
Counselor Thomas.
In favor.
Good, thank you. That's carried. Motion to move council into committee of the whole.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gregg, that City Council now move into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business.
Great, thank you. And all in favor?
In favor.
Yeah, you can't put your hand up. Counselor Gregg,
In favor.
Counselor Hamley,
In favor.
Counselor Kepke. Oh, I just lost Counselor Kepke. I'll come back. Counselor Merton,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor O'Leary,
In favor.
Counselor Tamming,
In favor?
Counselor Thomas,
In favor.
and back to Counselor Kepke.
I'm in favor. I did have a question of the clerk, though, about the closed session minutes of the DIA meeting. And they be coming to council next meeting for approval.
Sorry, which set of DIA minutes, closed session minutes are you referring to? The ones that you just recently had a closed session?
Correct. They were on our closed.
Through your worship to Councillor Kepke, usually what happens for those minutes is that they would be approved at the DIA first at their next closed session and then brought forward to council.
Thank you.
So we have passed number 7, which is moving council into committee of the whole. That did carry. So we are now at number 8. And at number 8, we have a public meeting. First of all, I declare that the public meeting is open. And I pass the torch.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of this public meeting was published in the Sun Times on January 8th, and the notice was listed as part of the council agenda. Recognizing that the public notice was not posted separately on the city's website, staff are extending the commenting period until January 29th, and a media release will be issued tomorrow with the details. The personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Municipal Act. The information collected will be used to complete the budget process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to myself, the city clerk.
Great, thank you. So it's over to Ms. Allen, Director of Corporate Services, to do her presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. Tonight is the public meeting portion of our 2021 budget process. Part of tonight's meeting, we will review the final draft of the 2021 operating budget and capital budget and receive a staff report with a recommendation to direct staff to bring forward a bylaw accepting the 2021 budget as presented. That bylaw will come forward on February the 8th as part of our regular council meeting. And as our clerk noted, tonight we will have some comments from the public, but in order to ensure that no one missed that opportunity as a result of us not posting this in the notices section of our website, we have extended that public comments period through to the end of January. And as such, any comments received after this evening will be summarized for council again on that February 8th meeting. The process to date for the budget followed a similar process as with many years. For staff, it starts in the late summer as we begin to plan and prepare the next year's budget. Operating budgets are carried forward and then changes are made to reflect current year conditions and service levels. Staff meet as a group to discuss potential recommended and planned capital projects, and council meetings are held in 3 stages to review each component of the budget. Our first meeting in November focused on the capital budget. In December, we looked at operating, and now tonight is our final budget meeting to review the completed draft document. We did do something a little bit differently this year, and I think it was an improvement to the overall process. Early in the spring, we had a call to budget survey with council, and this presented some questions to council in order to bring some priorities and directives in to help us build our budgets throughout the summer. From council, some of the consensus, I would say, inputs that came from council, and our responses are summarized. The overall operating budget increase in line with CPI was something that the majority of council supported. Our most recent annual Ontario CPI released by Statistics Canada is currently 0.9, and our current operating budget increase, excluding any service level changes, excluding pollution capital, is currently at 0.7. So we are actually coming in below that CPI index. With the service level changes, it brings it to 1.23%. Police service budget at 2.73% includes both their base budget and their service level changes. And then finally, our capital priorities were identified by council to be roads, road-related capital, downtown, and facility maintenance with specific reference to the Tom Thompson Art Gallery. Capital dollars were allocated to these projects first, and then the total capital program was prioritized based on a matrix that was developed. Bring forward a total levy increase. And really that is what we're looking at tonight, is taking all that budget information and coming down to the total number, which will make up our municipal levy. From there, that levy gets brought forward again in the next month or two to look at tax policy. And then finally, it will go into calculating our final tax bills and tax rates. Our total levy increase over 2020 is $850,000. This represents a 2.76% increase. Once prior year growth is factored in, the impact of that increase to the existing taxpayer is reduced down to 1.98%. And when we combine that with the county and provincial education levy estimates, a total tax bill increase at the time I wrote this presentation was 1.85% for the residential taxpayer. Since then, I have been updated from the county that their increase may be slightly higher. It was estimated at 2.18 for this purpose, and I believe it's now up to 3.11%. However, that would still bring a combined levy increase just below 2%, in my opinion. A question that has come up often over this past week as I've been speaking to council is how, with the changes that we're seeing in COVID and the persistence of COVID, how is COVID reflected and impacted in the 2021 budget? The current budget is set based on a normal year. So we eliminated the COVID impacts when we brought forward a budget. And this will ensure a stable increase for the taxpayers. Factoring in estimated impacts of COVID would have increased the total budget by an additional 3 to 5%. However, we don't know right now how long the financial impacts as far as municipal expenditures and revenues will persist. So we did not want to pass that risk of uncertainty onto the taxpayer. Instead, we focused on bringing forward a stable increase that is persistent with what we can expect any year. And then we will use our own management practices to make sure that we can complete this fiscal year within that budget envelope that has been provided. One strategy that we will use is we do have the Safe Restart funding that was received at the end of 2020, designated for 2021, $125,000 that has been set aside. We'll draw on that first. Should that be depleted, we can then move forward with adjusting service levels, potentially deferring planned capital spending, or looking at other management decisions that will impact our overall expenditures and ensure we can complete this year on budget despite the impacts of COVID. There have been no changes to this budget since our last budget meeting. So if you did want to refer to the actual detailed documents, you could look back to those agendas on December 3rd and November 16th in order to obtain those detailed budgets. Our total operating levy is, just in summary, almost $39 million. We have a capital program of $13 million. Water and wastewater are currently estimated, and we will bring forward those operating and capital budgets within the next coming months as well, but I estimate them to be around 13 million, which is consistent with most years. And that brings us with a total annual operating and capital budget, I should say, of close to $65 million. Of that, 31,700,000 makes up our municipal levy. The difference is funded through grants. Water and wastewater rates fully funds those budgets, user fees, and other external transfers. Our overall levy increase at 2.76%. When you combined The growth factored in 1.98%. What this would mean is the average household is paying an additional $55 a year towards city operations. The next slide is one that we present every year, and it just shows our total operating budget broken down by wage type. Or by expense type. One thing that's a little different about this pie chart than I have presented in the past years is this is only for general operations, and I've removed the impact of water and wastewater since they are fully funded through those rates. So as you can see, 61% of our operating budget relates to wages and wage-related overheads. And the majority of these wages would be unionized wages for police, fire, as well as our QP unions. Next at 15% is materials and supplies. This is everything from utility costs to the salt and sand that we put on our roads. Contract services are those amounts that we pay to third parties in order to perform services on our behalf, and the biggest ones there would certainly be our public transit and waste management services. Capital, debt, and reserve transfers represents historic capital in those debt payments, our current year capital program, and the money that we're putting into reserves to fund future capital. And that combined comes to 8%, and 4% represents amounts paid to external groups. And right now that is mostly made up by the Union Public Library, who we consider external to our operations. The next slide is also consistent with one we often present. However, we've broken down what those categories are a little bit different to align a little more closely to our strategic priorities as opposed to what our organizational structure looks like. 46% of our tax burden is for ensuring community safety. That would include police, fire, and bylaw enforcement. The next largest would be 18% at maintaining connections. That's our roads maintenance and public transit. Governance and program support is everything from most of the operations that happen out of City Hall. So everything from payroll, tax collection, the city manager's office, me, council, and our clerk services. All these things are making up what governance and program support. Encouraging recreation is our parks and trails. Supporting arts and culture is a Tom Thompson Art Gallery, as well as some transfers that we make to some museums in town, as well as some third parties. And a greener city, although climate change and providing a greener city is certainly part of all of these factors, currently allocated to that quadrant would be stormwater, waste management, and cemetery services. And then finally, fostering growth is our planning and engineering, non-capital engineering departments, as well as community development, tourism, and the DIA. On top of operating, we have a dedicated 1.27% being allocated to capital spending. Council will recall that you'd committed a dedicated 1%. That amount went into our capital program. The additional amount relates to increases required to transfers to reserves in order to fund our equipment and fleet replacement obligations. Major capital projects that are moving forward in 2021. There are 83 projects in total, representing almost $13 million of investment. Our electronic records management system is ongoing, and that should be wrapping up early in 2021. This is our largest annual asphalt replacement investment that I could find ever. We've allocated 100% of our current gas tax to asphalt replacement and rehabilitation. We have the East and West Side Trail rehabilitations. Currently, we have an outstanding grant under the ICIP for those projects. Should that not go forward, we could use historical years gas tax to fund those. So those will happen no matter what. The business process review that will ultimately result in a software needs assessment to help us assess our IT resources, our IT software resources specifically. The completion of the rehabilitation of 16th Street East, as well as the commencement of a second phase, should that connecting leak grant be approved. A partnership project with Grey County on the East Bayshore Road reconstruction. We have design and engineering for the next phase of the Downtown River Precinct, as well as design and engineering to ensure that we're shovel ready for 9th Ave East reconstruction in 2022. And completion, of course, of the 10th Street Bridge, including landscaping. Those are just some of the larger out of the 83 projects that we'll be moving forward with in 2021. Also, somewhere new to this year's budget is some communication tools. And first and foremost, of course, is the 2021 budget book. You'll recall with capital, we brought forward that capital book for the first time, and then we had a similar document for operating. Our total 2021 budget book puts those two documents together into one package, and this will be made available to the public through our city's website upon approval of the budget. It is attached as a PDF to tonight's agenda, and we have an issue link that I can send to council, and feel free to share that with the public as well if anyone is looking for it. Also coming forward to corporate services at the end of this month, we are presenting the 2021 capital map. This is a map that Curtis developed in GIS so that someone from the public can go onto a map of the city, and we've mapped out all 83 capital projects. So you can click on an icon. The icons are sort of differentiated by the type of project. See what that project is, its total budget, and a description of it. So that might be handy to see what sort of capital is happening closer to your neighborhood as well as throughout the city. I think this is going to be a map that evolves over time and allows us to incorporate more and more information from our capital budget that is useful and important to the citizens. And then finally, a citizen engagement exercise is planned for this year. This will allow for feedback and input into the budget process, among other things that the city undertakes. The last slide just summarizes those statistics that we look for every year. So the average residential home in 2021, and keep in mind, we're still relying on 2016 current value assessment. The average residential home is assessed at $220,000. And with the estimated 1.85% increase, their total taxes would be $3,888, which is an increase of just over $72 a year. That $3,888 is broken down by the three major levies. So the county levy would get $738, the school $340,000, that goes to the province, and then the city would retain that $2,814. That is then further broken down. The city portion, our core services at just over $1,000, police and fire at just over $1,000. $70 to the library, and roughly $630 a year goes towards capital, not only current year capital, but historical capital, and putting money aside for the future as well. So with that, I will pass on to our clerk to summarize any questions that we've received from the public. And then following this, I do have a staff report where I'll be happy to entertain any comments or questions from council.
Great, thank you. Ms. Bloomfield, did we get any comments from the public?
Through you, your worship, those wishing to speak at tonight's public meeting were to contact me by noon today. No one contacted me looking to participate, but I did receive a set of questions from David Chevalier, an Owen Sound resident. Mr. Chevalier's questions will be uploaded to the agenda tomorrow for reference. The questions are as follows. Number one, what training or new expertise is being brought in to measure emissions to reach climate goals and ensure sustainability for the city of Owen Sound? Without measurement, goals cannot be achieved. Number two, is there budget allocated for these important items? Number three, does the city of Owen Sound have the capacity and manpower to address increasing demand on the planning department? Number four, if the city of Owen Sound is spending money on recommendations for planning purposes, why are the recommendations of these experts not being implemented? Number five, in the draft plan, why has Owen Sound City Council chosen to ignore the Ontario Planning Act?
At least three of those seem to be perhaps more for the official plan public meeting tomorrow. They seem to be around planning, not around budget. I'm not sure if anybody, Kate or Pam, if you're out there, I don't know if you heard the questions. Did they not sound more like the official plan review tomorrow, some of those questions, than budget? Maybe go to you, Pam.
Your worship, thank you. Through you, your worship, it may be appropriate for council to direct, I think, items 3, 4, and 5 to the official plan review. Your worship, the public open house is Wednesday, January 20th, which is the day after tomorrow.
Okay, so I think I said tomorrow. So maybe we'll get those questions forwarded to that public meeting then, or to that file. So I know you're collecting lots of public information. I'll maybe come back and hit those dates and times for that meeting again in a few minutes. So with that, were there any other comments that we received? Okay, and I'm going to go back to Ms. Allen again. You said that people can submit responses up till the end of January with regard to the budget comments, questions. How would they submit those?
They can submit those as an email to the clerk.
Okay, perfect. So if anyone watching tonight has wishes to make comments, please go and review that budget book that will be online first, because you can probably answer your questions there. If you have others, please send us an email through to the clerk here at the City of Owen Sound, and we will review those. So thank you. So with that, I declare the public meeting closed. And going through the next step in the agenda, number 9, we have no deputations or presentations. Number 10, public question period. Did we have any separate public questions?
Through your worship, no questions were received.
Thank you. At number 11, we have correspondence, which direction of council is required. We have correspondence with regard to the Owen Sound Belly Bishop Regional Airport users. With regard to the landing fee petition, council, what do you want to do with that? Any comments? Councillor Kepke?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions, one particularly for the city manager regarding people who are in the flight school and any fees that are applicable to those students.
So through the mayor to Councillor Kipke, I think I heard a question in that statement. I have, since this report went to council in November, spoken with the head of the flight school and reiterated to the head of the flight school that landing fees will not impact the flight school business. So they will not be assessed on any of the flight school training simulations going on.
So in fact, then the statement in the correspondence that identifies individuals learning to land, that would be maybe landing 10 times in a practice lesson, would be charged $350. That's incorrect?
Through the mayor to Councillor Kepke, that is incorrect.
Okay. Also, I have a concern that a lot of the signatures on there are not correctly addressed. But I mean, that's something, if you investigate further, then you find that, but I'll just leave it at that.
Good, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
I just wanted to make a comment on the content of the petition here, and I will make a motion that we receive this for information and take no further action. I actually went through the entire petition, every single name today, and out of the 2,863 names, fully 121 of them identified as being from Owen Sound. That means that 2,742 names were not paying taxes in Owen Sound. And my favorite, by the way, out of all of those names was signed from Dublin, Ireland, which I found quite interesting. You know, all the power to them for coming up with a petition. That first 4 pages of explanation, as far as I'm concerned, is filled with inaccuracies and incorrect information. And again, 121 of those people are taxpayers in Owen Sound, or I'm sorry, identify as being Owen Sound taxpayers. Some of them are, in fact, not Owen Sound taxpayers either. So I would make a motion that we receive for information.
Thank you. Any other comments to the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Gregg.
I would, and I just, I'll support the motion from Councillor Thomas. I'd just like to reiterate too, and I've said it at council in the past, council is interested in still investing. It's not, there's been no discussion of shutting down the airport. I've said at council I think about a year ago, year and a half ago, A great gift for individuals that might be hard to buy for is to investigate the Owen Sound Flight Services. They have terrific charter flights. You can purchase a gift for somebody to send them to Killarney for the world's arguably best fish and chips, or local scenic tours. This is just a fee that at this time we're trying to offset the tax impact on the local residential taxpayer and commercial and industrial tax base. You know, there's different layers here in Owen Sound, but it's obviously heaviest and most impactful to the resident. We will hopefully continue with the necessary capital works. It's in front of council that, you know, and I sat at or inside of a beautiful airplane a couple of years ago during the air show that was on, gentleman's Piper that flew in. Love, a terrific plane, it's beyond words. But these individuals say with the appropriate maintenance, we don't have to go down the road of the $1 million plus capital reworking of the runway. Just do the asphalt fills each year. This is just a commitment council needs to maintain, but it's like many other services the city provides. It's a landing fee that we're hoping will offset the impact to the residential taxpayer, no different than fees in minor sports and other various user fees. Bag tags jump out as well. So I'll support the motion. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Councillor Tamming. Councillor Tamming? Go ahead. John,
There I am, Your Worship. I apologize. I'd like to echo what Richard Thomas said. I too went over the list and was surprised how many out of town, and I understand that they were speaking from a tourism and drop-in point of view. I would just like to say that when my family got involved in aviation some years ago, we're no longer at Wyerton or at Owen Sound Airport, but I spent some time hanging around tarmacs and so forth, learned a lot about it. I was frankly surprised that you don't have to spend anything to land on a lot of airport tarmacs in the province. I guess I'm happy for the aviation community, but if $35 is that oppressive to visit a lovely city such as ours, I question that. The second comment, and the last one I want to make on this is, and this just echoes what Councillor Thomas was saying as well. I believe last time I looked, we're closing at about $250,000, $250,000 to run the airport. And that's paid, if you add it up, by about 70 households in Owen Sound. So you can pick any street you want, drive down it, count 70 houses, and their annual tax bill goes to the airport. We are just trying to recover a little bit from the users to make things easier for the city taxpayers. And I too was a little off put by some of the tone, not just the content, but the tone of the petition. And I would urge them to take a different approach in communications in the future. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing any other hands going up, so I'm going to call the question. I'll go through my sheet of paper here. Councillor Dodd.
In favor.
Councillor Gregg.
In favor.
Councillor Hamley.
In favor.
Councillor Kepke.
In favor.
Councillor Merton.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
In favor.
Councillor Tamming.
In favor.
And Councillor Thomas.
In favor.
And so that is carried, which was to receive that, not take further steps. Down to number 12 on the agenda. So that's back to Ms. Allen with regard to her report on the budget bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't go through this report in too much detail as there's not anything here that hasn't already been discussed in tonight's public meeting or in the previous budget presentations. However, this is recommending that staff direct staff to bring forward a bylaw authorizing the municipal levy in line with the budget as it is presented, and that would happen on February 8th at our next regular council meeting.
Great, thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. I would move that recommendation. I would first of all like to say thank you to other councillors and staff for the days of service that we went through to go through this budget. People will recognize that this is not including COVID at this point, but that is why I would also make an additional recommendation or add to this motion if we can have another report back, whether that's in closed session or in public session, with senior management to have a further discussion.
I wonder if we'll do that as separate motions
Sure.
after, and
Yep.
that's a little
Sorry.
bit
Yep.
cleaner.
Okay. So I'll just move the original motion as it's currently presented. When we start talking about what is all in that budget, it breaks down to $10.65 for the average ratepayer a day. If you think of what you do in a day, all the roads you drive on, you know, the plow that comes down your road, all of those things that the public service provides, it literally comes down to $10.65. I think my dad spends that at Tim Hortons every day. The other piece that I did want to hit on, though, was there are options, even though this budget is not including COVID-related expenses. As the Director of Corporate Services had stated, we do have the Safe Restart grant funding that we received from the province. We also can apply service level changes throughout the years if certain services aren't going to be needed during COVID. We have that availability to make some changes, so that way we see some cost reductions for the ratepayer. And finally, I know I mentioned this in the last one, but I think it's the most important reserve that the city of Owen Sound has, and it's the Stabilization Reserve. And the Stabilization Reserve was created many, many moons ago, probably before Councillor McManaman was around. But the purpose of it is so that way when you have surpluses from years or deficits from years, you have pluses or minuses after each year, it is accumulated so that way when there is a tragic situation like the ones we're facing, that the municipality has coverage for that liability. So I think it's one of the best reserves that our past councillors have set up, as it's one that creates stability for the ratepayer for this year. So as we go through it, and we know that there's going to be many, many challenges that we face in the 2021 year, the end result is we do have options to ensure that in November, we're not running back to the ratepayer and saying we need more money. There are things here in place to ensure that the services can continue and that budgets will be covered. So I will move that recommendation.
Great, thank you. Other comments? Seeing none, so I will call the question: in favor or opposed?
Sorry, Your Worship, I'd ask if I could make a recorded vote.
Here we go. Off my hands, onto yours.
Councillor Dodd.
In favor?
Councillor Gregg.
In favor?
Councillor Hanley.
In favor.
Councillor Kepke.
In favor?
Councillor Merton.
Favor?
Councillor Tamming.
In favor?
Councillor Thomas.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
In favor.
Mayor Body.
In favor.
Resolution carried with 9 in favor and 0 opposed.
Great, thanks. I'm going to go back to you for the secondary motion.
Thank you, Worship. And I may need some assistance from other members of council with the wording of this, but what I'm basically hoping for is because there is a lot of things going on, I was just hoping that maybe senior staff, I know they're already working on it behind the scenes about what happened as the COVID crisis in 2021 continues. If council could just be provided with a report at a future meeting, so we could have a little bit of, know what's going on.
Go to Mr. Simmons.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dodd. I just wanted to make note, I'm jumping ahead to the COVID update report, and in the financial implications section, we will be bringing a final report on the 2020 year end in March, so just a couple months from now, at which time we'll confirm any additional amounts which may have been accrued to cover unbudgeted cost or lost revenues. And then beginning in March, we'll start a monthly COVID-19 financial update to council each month. So again, I just want to applaud the professionalism of staff and the administration. We take this very seriously. We meet informally every day about COVID costs and our service levels and how to run the administration. And then formally, we meet every 2 weeks again with our emergency operation team to go over COVID and COVID impacts. So I'm not certain, I guess where I'm going, Mr. Mayor, with this to Councilor Dodd is, I don't know that we need a separate motion unless you're pleased with the financial implications of the next report.
I'm gonna go through because I see other hands up, and we'll kind of get a feel from everybody. Councillor Merton, go ahead.
Through your worship. First of all, I want to thank the city manager and the staff for the COVID-19 status updates that you have provided. When we met for the budget, we had made some assumptions in a framework that we're in a different place now compared to November and December of last year. What I would find helpful in my responsibility for governance, not operational, but governance, is to have a template or a descriptor of the parameters that you will be using by which you measure the operational efficiencies. For example, when Kate, the Director of Corporate Services, presented just a few minutes ago, she outlined some strategies, some initiatives that would be addressed, and there were a variety of those. Basically, they were components of how the staff would look at things as we move through our COVID land. I would appreciate having that as a reference document that would be the tool by which your update reports reflect back upon. I would find that extremely helpful. The operational directions, as council, we rely on the expertise and professionalism and experience of the staff. But to have that framework would be helpful from a governance perspective.
Thank you. Other comments, other thoughts? Seeing none.
If I didn't make a motion, then, or if I did, I'll withdraw it. And if I didn't, then I'll be quiet.
Okay, so Councillor Dodd is withdrawing his motion. Councillor Merton, did you want to make a motion or not?
I would request that staff, yes, please. I would request through your worship that staff prepare a document that is the strategic guidance around which the COVID-19 update reports can anchor upon, outlining the categories and priorities that they would look at as they move through the year.
So you're looking for a report to come back to council that would set out a strategy depending how things change?
I think the city manager wishes to speak to that first, sir.
If through the mayor to Councillor Merton, and to council. I think I understand what you're asking for, and we can look for a sort of a more template-oriented piece when we do our March 2020 update and start. If you wouldn't mind, we'll look to standardize sort of what that would be, and I think you're looking for how does the administration come to certain decisions, and what is the tipping point for making that decision? So if you get to X, what makes you go to Y as opposed to Z? So I think we can incorporate that in our financial report and our update reports beginning in March. And that'll give us some time to look at maybe what some other municipalities may have done also, because again, things are changing daily and weekly with the province and with the region and with vaccinations coming, of what that standardized template might look like.
Back to you, Councillor Merton.
I would find that very helpful. Is that basically a request then to make it, excuse me, a more fulsome report rather than a motion on the table? And I would look to the guidance of the clerk for that, or the mayor.
Go ahead.
Through you, your worship, as I understand from the city manager, it sounds like what you're looking for will be incorporated into that March report that's already going to be coming forward for your consideration.
I'm comfortable with not moving forward with the motion based on that.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from anyone on this? Again, I'm seeing none. So we'll move on. We have approved, yes, it was recorded vote. So secondary motion wasn't made. 12B, report from Mr. Simmons with regard to the city's actions, decisions implementing the COVID-19 from December 12th to January 14th.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So pleased to bring you the COVID update report. I'll also notice we have a new report template with a highlight section right up front. Two of the highlights I'd like to bring to your attention is the first bullet point. City Hall and other city facilities will remain closed to the public through February 16th as the province has declared a state of emergency. And some people might be wondering why February 16th rather than the 12th. Well, the 15th, the Monday, is Family Day weekend. So City Hall would already be closed on the Monday. So we feel, and with the weekend, we're closed also. So it's just easier alignment from the calendar to hopefully restart things, move in a positive direction with COVID, that we can reopen city facilities on Tuesday, the 16th. The other item I'd like to highlight in that section is the phase 2 safe restart funding that Ms. Allen had spoke to earlier. Yes, at the end of the year, the provincial money received was $125,000 for Owen Sound. That is, so to speak, in the bank here and will be used as needed. Another amount of money not included funding that has been received is for our transit services. So we do have a significant amount of money received for transit related to COVID impacts. We have received that also, and it will be used as needed throughout the year as transit has some heavy obligations financially throughout the year. With the provincial update, I'd like to focus again on January 12th as Ontario declared a second provincial emergency and a stay-at-home order was issued effective January 14th. That changed to some of the actions we've been taking with some of the outdoor rinks, etc. I do have another section, the vaccine news, that I'd like. Dr. Ian Ara, the Grey Bruce Health Unit. He has said and confirmed that the Grey Bruce Health Unit offices located at 101 17th Street East will be the primary vaccination site for Owen Sound. However, as vaccine distribution and manufacturing increases over the coming weeks and months, a secondary location may be required in the city to accommodate 1,000 or more daily vaccinations. So we as staff see as a prudent move to seek council's direction and ability to authorize and allow the immediate use of a city facility, either in whole or in part, if required. Moving through the report, the field hospital that was created back on March 26th under the March directive, the 75-bed hospital was set up. It is still in place at the Bay Shore. It still has not been put into use. However, again, as things change rapidly in the province, we know in the GTA, they are starting to move patients out of the GTA to Kitchener and other locations and to Kingston. So we're watching closely. We are staying in close contact with the hospital. But as of right now, the temporary field hospital is set up and ready to go if needed. Council and committee electronic meetings, again, with this new stay-at-home orders, our city's procedural bylaw does allow for council, board, and committee members to participate in meetings by electronic means. Between January 19th and February 12th, we have scheduled the following committee meetings to meet via electronic means. That's Community Services, Accessibility Advisory, the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Advisory, Corporate Services. We have Committee of the Whole Council on February 8th, and then on the 9th is an Operations Committee. So right now we've limited it to planning for that to move through February 16th. We again hope that things move in a positive direction and then council and committee can once again meet here in person. Bylaw enforcement and licensing. Through the Clerk Services Department, it should be noted that commissioning, issuing marriage licenses and performing civil ceremonies will continue to be suspended while City Hall is still closed. So again, through the 16th of February. All indoor recreation programs have been suspended. As mentioned, buildings are closed. However, staff continue to work with the minor sports groups on what their programs may look like after February 12th. So again, working towards spring, summer plans and fall plans and staying in close contact with all the organizations. It is good to know, as Mayor Body, you've mentioned many times about physical wellness, mental health, mental well-being. The city is having all the parks remain open with normal snow removal, sanding activity, and all normal winter parks maintenance activities are ongoing. So I'd recommend to anybody at stay at home, take advantage of the parks. We have beautiful parks in the city, and that's a way to get out and enjoy the outdoors. Given the provincial restriction, and speaking about parks, we've temporarily closed the outdoor rink at Harrison Park from December 26th to January 8th. We reopened the rink on the 8th to immediately close it down again. However, we've been able to work through provincial regulations. The rink will operate and stay open with 5 skaters at a time on 30-minute intervals. And many might be asking, is it cost effective to do so? The costs of the fencing, the temporary staffing, and all costs associated with keeping the rink open, even on a limited basis, is being used by TIO grant funds that we had access to that will expire before the rink does. So it's either a use the funds or lose it. We have been in touch with the province. They have authorized that this is a use for that. So no city taxpayer dollars are keeping this open, but it's a great thing, again, for those that can take advantage of it. Just a few other points here. RTO 7 Tourism Response Fund is open, and the Ontario Small Business Support Grant are 2 programs designed to assist small business. Our staff have been in touch with small business and the downtown improvement area businesses to make sure that they are applying for those. And then tourism event staff are also working on the same premise right now, that 2021 will look very similar to 2020. So it's not necessarily people traveling outside of the region to Owen Sound, but it's a hyper-local tourism activity. Events such as music at the market, TD Harbor Nights, outdoor movie nights, et cetera, are all being, again, looked at. How do we scale that? We learned a lot last year of how to operate those in COVID. Again, we're hoping by the fall, things might open up a bit more. But even so, those events, I think, were really well appreciated and well attended by local residents. The last thing I'd like to speak with is Public Works, and discussions are being held with our Director of Public Works and management staff across Grey County municipalities to discuss potential actions, creating a memorandum of understanding concerning snow removal and other winter maintenance and other operations in general. If one of our neighboring municipalities did have a COVID outbreak and went down, how can we help them, or how could they help us? Again, we hope we never get to that point, but they're looking at opportunities to at least draft up an MOU and bring that back to council if needed, and that hopefully will help all of Grey County and our neighboring municipalities. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm open for any questions.
Great, thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have any questions for Mr. Simmons. It was a great report, so I appreciate it. Thank you. I did just want to make one comment regarding some of the available support that's currently at Grey County. There is business support up with Grey County. There's a phone number if you are a small business that are wondering what you can be eligible for. The phone number is 519-372-0219, extension 1270, and they will have someone who can assist you with what you are eligible for the grants that are out there. I know there's a number of them and they can be confusing, but the recent provincial grant allows up to $10,000 to $20,000 of grant funding, but also covers property tax and energy bill rebates. So some of these small businesses that are being faced with some of these shutdowns, there are some options there for you. The COVID Tourism Response Fund is also available, as Mr. Sims has mentioned. So there is a lot of help there. So if you do have someone or you know somebody who has a small business, please refer them to call to Grey County, and they'd be more than happy to help with the application process. Yeah, I moved that, didn't I?
No, you didn't, but are you about to?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, sorry, I thought I did.
Moving Mr. Simmons' report, perfect. Any other questions or discussions out there, Councillor Gregg?
Thanks, Mayor Body. Just not too many questions with the report at all. It's a good highlight of where we're at right now, but just some comments to the public at large. I appreciate the public at all times when they challenge their politicians, ask us good probing questions. It's our job to know the answer or to get the answer. I appreciate the people of Ontario who are questioning where the Ministry of Health is getting their numbers. When they say 20,000 cases per day, I sit back and I look at Florida, which has been a free-for-all, and unfortunately has many people that think it's a hoax. It's got a population of under 25 million. and they're running at around 13,000 cases a day. Recently, they're at 10,000, 7,800 in those areas. So I think it's good when the public challenges their politicians on, you know what, you show us where you've got that data. Where is that material coming from? How do you get that 20,000? Because there's other evidence that points to the contrary. Now, that said, I'm certain that this wasn't an easy discussion in Toronto to take the steps that they've done. Locally, we have just done a terrific job here in Owen Sound and further out in Bruce Grey, Owen Sound, under the leadership of ENR and the health unit. It's terrific. Your actions are paying off. And for me personally, when the cases go down, if the struggles remain in other parts of the province, it makes it a lot easier for me to take a real defensive approach on behalf of the residents and the businesses, the small businesses that are really taking it on the chin in our area, to advocate loudly for a regionalized approach like we saw last spring as we came out of this, and we led the pack coming back out of it. So accolades to those in our community and the efforts that you're making to this point. It's winter, it can be bleak, but the weather's been terrific. Get outside. I know I'm looking at Director Coulter, who starts her day off with a workout every day. It's probably how she structures and plans the next 12 hours of what she accomplishes in the day. And Councillor Thomas, who's always out there working his way through Harrison Park and the fitness trail. So get outside, ski, walk. You can have your bike out. The weather's been terrific. It helps with your frame of mind. We've got quite a bit more winter to go yet, but keep up the great work, residents of Owen Sound and Grey Bruce.
Thanks. Anyone else have any comments? I haven't called the question yet, correct? Okay, so we have to vote. Councillor Dodd.
In favor.
Councillor Gregg.
In favor.
Councillor Hambley.
In favor?
Councillor Kepke.
In favor?
Councillor Merton.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
In favor.
Councillor Tamming.
In favor?
Councillor Thomas.
In favor?
So that is carried. We're down to 12C, which I believe is Ms. Coulter, probably presenting the Sydenham campus report.
Thank you, Your Worship. The city has received an application for zoning bylaw amendment and site plan approval from the County of Grey to allow the former Sydenham School to be repurposed as an innovation center, which is a research and development facility. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will define a research and development facility. It will add that as a permitted use in the institutional zone, and it will also establish site-specific parking requirements for that use. The 10-acre subject property, as most of you know, is the former Sydenham School located on the north side of 8th Street East. It does have access to full municipal services. It is designated institutional in our official plan and also zoned I-1. As part of submitting a complete application, the County of Grey has submitted a site plan, a phasing plan, grading and drainage, stormwater letter, as well as a summary of their proposal. This technical report really provides for Council the policy framework in which you will consider the request for zoning amendment. In terms of the next step, we have this technical report on January 18th. On January 19th, we would give notice of the public meeting. In the newspaper as well, we'll mail a courtesy notice to those residents surrounding the subject property. On January 26th, we would present the site plan to our Accessibility Advisory Committee and obtain their feedback. February 8th, we would have a council host a public meeting, and that would include a presentation by planning staff. And then, subject to the input that we receive in February at the public meeting, staff would assimilate those comments and come back to you with a recommendation report in March. So with that, Your Worship, the recommendation is that In consideration of the report, you would direct staff to continue to process the zoning bylaw amendment number 32 in accordance with the process outlined in the report.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg?
I'd move that. I don't have any further questions on the report.
Anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Councillor Dodd?
In favor?
Councillor Gregg?
In favor?
Councillor Hamley?
In favor?
Councillor Kepke?
In favor?
Councillor Merton?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor O'Leary?
In favor?
Councillor Tamming?
In favor?
And Councillor Thomas?
In favor?
So that's carried. Thank you. 12D is report from Ms. Allen with regard to transit enhanced cleaning payment agreement.
Sorry, trying to find my mute button there. This is a report asking for direction to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a transfer payment with the province Ministry of Transportation for an enhanced cleaning fund. This program was announced in 2020 and the city is entitled to approximately $10,500 to support our additional costs associated with keeping our public transit and terminal safe during the COVID pandemic. This will be supplemented, of course, with the Safe Restart funding that I also mentioned in the report. And certainly all of these grants together ensure that we'll be able to continue to operate public transit well into 2021 without having to risk running a deficit or making decisions to adjust these service levels.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I'd move the recommendation.
Any questions or discussions? Seeing no hands going up, I again will call the question. Councillor Dodd?
In favor?
Councillor Gregg?
In favor?
Councillor Hamley?
In favor?
Councillor Kepke?
In favor?
Councillor Merton?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor O'Leary?
In favor?
Councillor Tamming?
In favor?
Councillor Thomas?
In favor?
That is carried. Next, 12E, Deputy Mayor O'Leary's verbal report from Grey County and Grey Bruce Board of Health.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Grey County report, the most important news from last Thursday's meeting is regarding affordable housing. Although it still has to be passed through the budget, the Grey County Council unanimously voted in favor of adding 1 full percentage of the entire budget towards affordable housing. In my opinion, this is huge and it's bold. It's also the most important decision Grey County Council has made since I've been on the council. 1% of the 2021 budget amounts to about $610,000, plus the $500,000 we already have included in this year's budget. That's a total of over $1.1 million in 2021 budget going to affordable housing. We have people in our community struggling, and this will give our most vulnerable hope. This commitment by council is not only for 2021. We are adding 1 full percentage of the budget each year thereafter toward affordable housing. This is a shared priority and responsibility, and I think it's important to mention that the city of Owen Sound is rather unique in that 43% of our population are renters. Barb Fady is the Director of Social Services at the county, and she says in her experience that for every dollar spent on social services in the short term is worth $7 in the long term. We have people in our community that are working hard but coming up short through no fault of their own. If we can help these people with housing, they will contribute more to society, and that will benefit us all. That's the Grey County report. The health unit report. We have in Grey and Bruce counties, we have 648 cases to date, 43 active cases, 199 high-risk contacts associated with active cases. We have 2 cases currently hospitalized, 0 deaths and 0 facility in COVID-19 outbreak. There's 0 schools in outbreak, 0 daycare in outbreak. Locally, we maintain good control over the pandemic. Significant increase in the number in the past 2 weeks related to family and friend gatherings over the holidays. We predict this will go back to baseline by the end of the month. Locally, we have control over the outbreak, seeing relatively low daily case counts and minimal hospitalization. The current provincial numbers of around 3,000 new cases per day will result in lagging indicators of hospital admission, ICU admission, and deaths in the coming 3 to 7 weeks. I just note that today's totals were down to 2578, so that's looking positive. The cumulative totals of projected COVID-19 cases in hospital and ICU over the coming weeks will challenge the hospital system's ability to care for COVID and non-COVID patients alike. This stress on the healthcare system will result in suffering and death. Although we have minimal hospitalization, our local hospitals are part of the provincial hospital system and liable to accept any overflow of patients from neighboring hospitals. The growing pressure on the healthcare system also affects our local hospitals' ability to transfer patients that are more critical to other care centers. Those transfers will become more and more restricted as those care centers run out of ICU beds. We need to act today by gaining full compliance with the provincial stay-at-home order to prevent transmission. Limiting and reducing transmission alleviates the pressures on the hospital system and allow all of us the access to health care if needed, whether COVID or non-COVID. Remember to follow the 3 W's: washing hands frequently, watching your distance, ideally 6 feet, and wear a face mask covering correctly. Vaccine distribution in Grey Bruce and messaging. Grey Bruce Health Unit follows the provincial framework. Phase 1 includes congregative living, residents, staff, essential caregivers, healthcare workers, adults in First Nations, Métis and Inuit populations, adult chronic home care recipients. Long-term care is planned to be completed by February 15th, 2021. First vaccine shipment was received and used on January 15th. We completed 2 long-term care homes out of 19 in Grey and Bruce. The federal government has been notified that Pfizer is temporarily reducing deliveries to all countries receiving vaccine manufactured at its European facility by approximately half in coming weeks. This includes Canada. We received reassurance from the Ministry of Health that the shipment scheduled for the week of January 25th will not be affected. We're working with the school and childcare in Grey and Bruce. Childcare, there's no cases currently, and schools are closed. Ongoing actions at the Grey Bruce Health Unit, receive and review reopening plans for locations that are closed due to COVID, including inspections as required. Board of Health Unit Infectious Disease team continue with case and contact management, reporting and responding to COVID-19 related calls. Contact tracing exceeds provincial targets with 100% of all cases contacted within 24 hours. The Grey Bruce Health team continue to ensure essential public health activities not related to COVID-19. And with that, Your Worship, I would ask that we receive those 2 reports.
Great, thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Thomas, go ahead.
Your Worship, I'd just like to bring it back around to that county report for a moment, and I'd like to offer my thanks and congratulations to Councillor O'Leary. The point he left out about the 1% that will now go to not-for-profit housing is the fact that he was the author of that motion. And so I'd just like to thank Brian on behalf of myself and the rest of council and the people who benefit most from that motion. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas.
That was on my list. Thank you, Richard. It started with Brian on the housing committee up there, bringing that idea and selling it and selling it to all of them and all of them selling it to all of council. So, you know, we all sit around and talk about how we want more affordable housing and wait for someone else to do it. And Brian took the bull by the horns and is getting it done. I also note on the stay home, stay safe that today we had new cases of, I think, 4 or 5. And we were up in the teens throughout Grey and Bruce. And you know, last summer, if you told me that we were hitting 4 or 5, we would have been disappointed. But these are good numbers. I think the most important number is the one that we get we look for this daily when we get our reports from Dr. Era. 115 high-risk contacts associated with active cases. That was up around 160 approximately a week or 10 days ago. So staying at home and staying safe may seem like, it may be difficult for each of us individually, and we don't necessarily see the achievement or see that it's working. But if we can keep knocking those high-risk contacts down from 115 and keep the new cases, under 5 throughout Graham Bruce, we probably won't be able to, but if we can keep working, we should be able to keep that going. And I think it is working. It's clear that it's working. We just got to keep discipline. So good work for everybody at the health unit and Dr. Era for bringing that forward. If there's no other comments, I'll call the question on receiving the verbal report from Deputy Mayor O'Leary. Councillor Dodd?
In favor.
Councillor Gregg?
In favor.
Councillor Hamley?
In favor.
Councillor Kepke?
In favor?
Councillor Merton?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor O'Leary?
In favor.
Councillor Tamming?
In favor?
Councillor Thomas?
In favor?
So that is carried. Next, we have the consent agenda, and I'll go to Ms. Bloomfield to read us the list.
Through your worship, on the consent agenda this evening is a report respecting the 2021 interim tax levy bylaw, and it's for receipt from the Library Board and the DIA Board. There's a flag flying request from the United Way of Bruce Gray. Business licenses were issued to Medusa at 879 10th Street West, Moki Bubble Tea at 237 10th Street East, and GBTEL Inc. at 270 9th Ave East. Lastly, the information package is available at 13G.
Great, thank you.
My apologies. Moved by myself that City Council receives items 13A to 13G on the consent agenda dated January 18th, 2021, and further that the recommendation contained in item 13A be approved.
Great, thanks. So approval or not, Councillor Dodd?
In favor.
Councillor Gregg?
In favor.
Councillor Hamley?
In favor.
Councillor Kepke?
In favor?
Councillor Merton?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor O'Leary?
In favor.
Councillor Tamming?
In favor?
Councillor Thomas?
In favor?
Good, so that is carried. If I can go back up at 13B, we had minutes from the North Grey Union Public Library from October 29th, 2020. Anything you want to advise us of, Councillor Thomas?
Well, a lot of the meeting was spent talking about our reopening plans, which were at that time rolling along perfectly well, but I don't think we need to discuss them tonight now that everything's changed again. There are a couple of changes to service that will be of interest to our patrons. We have canceled Hoopla, which was a digital media sharing service, because it was so popular that our budget just could not sustain continuing with it. But the good news is we have a new program offering that we'll be adding coming this fall. We'll be adding Linda to the library's selections of digital offerings. And for those who aren't familiar, Linda is an instructional site that includes courses, I think 4,000 courses on just about anything you'd care to name. So good changes coming forward to the library. And, if we're still stuck at home in the fall when it comes online, there's something else we can do.
Great, thank you. There are minutes from the DIA from December 9th, 2020.
Your worship, there's really nothing to report there. We just talked about budget at that meeting, and that was pretty much all we had. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I do note in correspondence that I received something earlier this week from StatsCan, informing us that the next census will take place in May of 2021. For over a century, Canadians have relied on census data to tell them about how their country is changing and what matters to them. We all depend on key socioeconomic trends and census analysis to make important decisions that have a direct impact on our families, neighborhoods, and businesses. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, StatsCan had adapted to ensure that the 2021 census is conducted throughout the country in the best possible way, using safe and secure approaches. They'll be hiring approximately 32,000 people across the country to assist with the consensus collection. Not consensus, just census. There'll be more information coming forward, so that's something to keep in mind that it is coming. Some of us remember we used to get the little red and white Canadian pencils to fill them out, and they're probably still in our pencil cases. At least Councillor Dodds maybe. So with that, that gets us through the consent agenda. We're down to 14, the committee reports, starting with community services. Councillor Kepke from December 16th.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a summary from that particular set of minutes. As in other committees, members regarding a refresh of the city's strategic plan, identifying strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results with respect to various goals within the plan that relate to community services. A report was received regarding parkland conveyance to the site plan approval. Further options for consideration will be presented over the coming year. Property located at 908 2nd Ave East, known as the Kilbourne Block, was recommended to be included on the city's list of registered properties of cultural heritage value or interest for its design and physical, historic, and contextual values. Members reviewed a business case for renovations to Cemetery Chapel for an indoor columbarium, and it's being recommended that staff proceed with the design and engineering phase of a capital project as part of the 2021 budget. Details of the project can be found more so in the minutes. Members received a report regarding an event, Snow and Sound Frolics, which was planned to take place in the month of February. This is an event that takes place through social media and photography, which will include facts about locations. During these times, exercise is deemed essential for our mental and physical well-being, and this is for members of the community to stay active. A wrap-up report on a very successful Music in the Market event, and building statistics showed a year-to-date construction value of $65,117,013. November 2020 totals were $842,800 compared to the 2019 totals of $294,500. And that's all that's contained in the minutes, Your Worship. With that, I'll move the approval of the minutes.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Kepke? Seeing none. In favor, Councillor Dodd?
In favor.
Councillor Gregg?
In favor.
Councillor Hamley?
In favor.
Councillor Kepke?
In favor.
Councillor Merton?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary?
In favor.
Councillor Tamming?
In favor.
Councillor Thomas?
In favor.
So those are carried. So down to 12B, Minutes of Corporate Services Committee, Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Your Worship. We also were doing the strategic plan refresh with our committee on this date. So we did that. We also got an update from the Director of Corporate Services with some new funding information regarding the 2020 year. Ms. Allen had noted that we had received an additional $345,000 from the province dedicated to public transit. And as the Director had previously stated, which will allow the city to get through 2021 and potentially 2022 without a transit deficit. The city also received an additional $157,000 through the phase 2 funding, as well as the 125 Safe Restart, which was allocated for 2021. And as a result, the Director confirmed that with the new provincial funding, the city should no longer be in a deficit position for the end of the 2020 year. So coming through that, all of that at a break-even point is fantastic. We also received a report regarding grievances from all of our unions within the corporation. Overall, we have since November of 2015, we've received 20 grievances from our QP 1189 outside union. I would note that 3 of those came from 2019, 4 of those were from 2020, none were taken to arbitration. We've had 3 grievances for QP 1189 inside, 1 in 2020, none taken to arbitration. We've had 1 employer-initiated local with our local 531, which is our firefighter. That is means that the employers filed, the corporation filed a grievance in 2017, and the local 531 fire union has 37 grievances, and 11 are currently in arbitration, 6 are ongoing, 7 from 2019, and 13 of those are from 2020. And with that, Your Worship, I would move approval of the minutes.
Great, thank you. Any questions from anyone? Seeing none, I will call the question. Councillor Dodd.
In favor.
Councillor Gregg.
In favor.
Councillor Hamley.
In favor.
Councillor Kepke.
In favor.
Councillor Merton.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
In favor.
Councillor Tamming.
In favor.
Councillor Thomas.
In favor.
So that carries. Thank you. 14C, minutes of economic development from December 11th. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Your Worship. We had a presentation at that meeting from Savannah Myers, the Grey County Director of Economic Development, Tourism and Culture, regarding their 2021 initiatives. We did have the main purpose of the meeting was to discuss the name and the mandate of our Economic Development Committee. And after some discussion, we did change the name of the committee to the Community Development, Tourism and Culture Advisory Committee. Some of you will remember we did roll culture back into that committee from Community Services. And so we have a new mandate and a new name moving forward, which will hopefully give us a stronger purpose within the city of Owen Sound. And then the other major article, as many of the committees have been doing, we worked on the strategic plan refresh, making our vision clear, led by the city manager and his team. With that, Your Worship, I will move acceptance of those minutes.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. Councillor Dodd.
In favor.
Councillor Gregg.
In favor.
Councillor Hamley.
In favor.
Councillor Kepke.
In favor.
Councillor Merton.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
In favor.
Councillor Tamming.
In favor.
Councillor Thomas.
In favor.
Great, thank you. What's left? Operations, Councillor Hamley.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. This was the last Operations Committee for 2020. There were no recommendations to council, but we did receive the 2021 budget as it relates to operations. And the 3 big ticket items this year are the East Bay Shore Road rehabilitation and the sewage pumping station, 9th Avenue East engineering with the intent to rehabilitate that in 2022, and the second phase of the downtown river precinct. And with that, Your Worship, I would move receipt.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, call the question. Councillor Dodd.
In favor.
Councillor Gregg.
In favor.
Councillor Hamley.
In favor.
Councillor Kepke.
In favor.
Councillor Merton.
Favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
In favor.
Councillor Tamming.
In favor.
Councillor Thomas.
In favor.
So those are carried. So that's all the committee minutes tonight. At 15, we have no postponed matters. At number 16, we have a notice of motion, which was previously given. Over to you, Councillor Tamming.
I wish tonight to bring the following motion, which is contained within the agenda. That in consideration of the minutes of the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Advisory Committee held on December 1, 2020, City Council directs the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Director and Chief Curator to prepare a report for the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Advisory Committee respecting the proposed establishment of an expansion of the Art Gallery Facility Ad Hoc Committee as required in the city's board and committee bylaw. May I speak to that?
Yes, please go ahead.
Terrific. Your Worship and councillors, I'm very excited, and members of the public, I'm very excited to bring this motion. And I should note off the bat that Aidan Ware, our head curator and director, is listening in. and she's available for any questions you might have. Let me stress what this motion is not about. We are not voting to expand the gallery. We're not even asking for a vote tonight to actually establish an expansion committee. We are asking Aidan to report to her advisory committee and to council on the merits of launching an expansion committee. By passing this motion, we would signal to her and her hardworking staff that we are very interested in her findings and the findings of any such future committee. So I admit we're taking baby steps. We're being very deliberative. And that's the right approach, in my view, as chair. But let me stress that we would not be starting this journey if the need was not serious and pressing. We have one of the most important art collections in Ontario, if not Canada. Tom Thompson is one of the most iconic of all Canadian artists, and we are blessed with an abundance of his art and that of his contemporaries. Not only, though, do we house a lot of Tom Thompson, we are also a regional center for many of the artisans of our own community. And as such, we tell each other our best and our brightest stories through art, through the mediums of sculpture, painting, drawing, and otherwise. So when you house the work of an icon, when you're at the intersection of local art and their artisans and their art, in our view, you have an obligation to make that house, that intersection, as interesting and compelling as possible. Just permit me 4 quick points, please. Number one, we have found that our guests want more of an experience. Right now, we're more or less an hour, maybe an hour and a half as a cultural visit. Our residents want more. Tourists want more. If we're going to sell ourselves as a cultural destination, we need to offer more, in our view. More and larger exhibition rooms are thus needed. So number one, a greater experience. Number two is a problem with storage. We last built 40 years ago. Someone just reminded me the other day, I think it was Neil Devlin, that we back then had about 800 pieces. Now we have over 3 times that. We can't show our best stuff anymore. Too much is in storage. And of that which is in storage, a lot of that we can't even store on site. We are literally bursting at the seams. And unfortunately, it's very difficult for us to accept new donations without going off site. And there are discussions of serious donations all the time with our gallery. It's less than ideal if we can't welcome that with open arms. So we need more of an experience. In our view, we probably need more. We do need more storage. We'd also point out 3, that a lot of our staff have their offices in converted storage rooms and effectively closets. Enough said of that. And fourth and finally, we do have serious accessibility issues. That which was good perhaps 40 years ago in terms of the ramp and what is now a cramped elevator, they're just not in keeping with the welcome that we wish to shout out to members of our community and to guests that might visit from wherever. The arts are a huge part of Owen Sound and region. With our new director, we are on a roll. To meet Aidan, and I hope many of you have, is to meet somebody who knows the lay of the land artistically and whose enthusiasm and competence is self-evident. We'd like to run with that. By passing this motion, we spend no money, we incur no obligations. We're simply giving Aidan our blessing to sow some seeds, ask some questions, explore some options, and report back to her committee and council as to whether, in fact, an ad hoc expansion committee is the way to go. I thank you for listening.
Great, thank you. Questions from other councillors? Councillor Merton.
Through your worship to Councillor Tamming, just for me to clarify, earlier this evening, we learned that culture is a category that has been added to one of our existing committees. I'm wondering if your thoughts are that this report would also start to flow back through council by the committee, through the committee that now encompasses culture, so that it will come to council, but certainly can be incorporated within that. Right now, my understanding of your motion is that Aidan Ware is being asked to create a report that will go to the advisory committee but I'm wondering if there is another forum for that report to go to as well.
Aidan, you can, thank you, Councillor Merton. I really appreciate the question. Aidan, I don't think I've asked you to speak yet. I don't know if you're able to speak to that, but I'm certain you'd be receptive to any and all collaboration with any committees.
Jumps in for the simple reasons I think we're starting to cross committees in a sense, and that's certainly not within what your motion is. The idea of the, and Richard could probably speak best to this, the idea of pushing up culture and the economic development and tourism is that we've got a 47-year-old symphony, a 47-year-old folk festival, a 60-year-old little theater, a 55-year-old art gallery. We've got all these things that we're not coordinating, and we're not taking advantage of doing those to try and build that into the tourism idea and make sure that's pushed to the top. So that was the thinking on that. Aidan will certainly be attending on behalf of the gallery as one of those people to that committee. But what John's talking about is coming back to the Tom Thompson Art Committee, the Gallery Advisory Committee, and reporting there, which is going to focus on more the operation of the gallery and not try and mix up this type of thing at this time with what the other committee's doing, I think is the thinking. And I'm maybe putting words in Tim's mouth, but that was kind of the thinking. I will go to Aidan to see if she wants to, Ms. Ware, if she wants to add anything more to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree, and I do on that committee, so I can bring those points forward and certainly advocate for the gallery and keep that committee informed.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Thomas, go ahead.
I just wanted to speak up in support of the motion. I will be supporting Councillor Tamming. I think that as a past chair of the Tom Committee, the advisory committee, you know, this is long overdue. And I'd just like to thank the committee for starting actually at the start this time instead of, you know, partway through, which is what we experienced before. One of the things that I'd be interested in seeing included in the report, I don't think we need a friendly amendment or anything like that, but we have heard for many years about the various different iterations of plans that were drawn up for the redevelopment of the gallery. There's at least 3 that I'm aware of in the past 30 years, and it would be really interesting to actually finally bring them out into the light of day as a part of this study and see what the thinking was in the past as we move forward towards some sort of future redevelopment.
You read our mind, Councillor Thomas. Aidan and I and Tim, we were just looking at some plans that we uncovered from years ago, and it is fascinating archaeology that perhaps we can update. Might even save, if we go that route, and nobody's predicting anything, it might even save some expense down the road.
And Ms. Ware has been good at pulling all those documents, and with David Huff over there pulling together all the documents are there. So it is in a file, Richard, that they've been able to find and access. So we're in good shape on that. Naturally, the world has changed since then, and some of the reports would have to be renewed, but they are there and a good basic foundation. So with that, any other comments to Councillor Tamming's motion? If not, I'm going to call the question. Councillor Dodd.
In favor.
Councillor Gregg.
In favor.
Councillor Hamley.
In favor.
Councillor Kepke.
In favor.
Councillor Merton.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
In favor.
Councillor Tamming.
In favor.
Councillor Thomas.
In favor.
So that's carried. That's good. Next, we're down to discussion of additional business, and I think Councillor Gregg had one.
Thanks, Mayor Body. We've been ongoing in our official plan update for over a year now, and we're at the draft stage. We started as a council with a visioning meeting in the basement of City Hall, I think maybe December, January, 12, 13 months ago. But where we're at now, we've got the draft. It's an extensive document, and this is an extremely important overarching document that will preside over, approved by council and preside over council for 10 years or longer. It's a document that I believe needs to come back to council for more discussion. It's too difficult. We could discuss it tonight, but I would probably not expect that all members have read the 200 pages or would be prepared to discuss all the bullet points as one works through an extensive document like this. I think it requires and deserves a special council meeting so that council can now evaluate where we've gotten ourselves incorporating the material and the input from the public. We've still got an open house on Wednesday, so we've got more material coming forward. But for me to just provide input on height restrictions that I don't agree with, or transitional restrictions in the harbor area, or certain homes in certain areas of the city, conversion to condominiums, I don't think there's any possibility of council advancing in a reasonable discussion without having a special council meeting to be able to pull this document together in a more fulsome, cohesive manner. So that's what I'm asking for tonight, is for the opportunity of council to have a special council meeting then prior to this document just being updated in draft form and then looking for an approval at a council meeting. It's just not opportune for council.
Great, thank you. Ms. Coulter, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly, I appreciate the comments from the councillor, and I can't stress the importance of the official plan in terms of guiding the future growth and development of this community. And really, it's council's contract with the community about how Owen Sound's going to grow and develop over the next 20 years. On November 18th at Community Services Committee, there was a report that sort of outlined the next steps. And those steps included launching, and that report introduced 4 policy papers for council, including a paper specifically devoted to sustainability and climate change, as well as housing and affordability, land use, and transportation. At the November 18th council meeting, and in the minutes that council approved on November 30th, I think, you gave staff direction to continue to move forward. And those sort of critical next steps were that media advisory and updating the website with those 4 policy papers. And we made the public aware of when and how to get the draft official plan. And it is a big document. It's a lot to go through. So that was done on December 10th. On December 29th, we gave notice of an open house, and several people are registered. The open house is going to be held virtually on Wednesday due to current provincial restrictions on gathering. But just as this council can meet and have a great meeting electronically, I know Dave Aston and his team at MHBC will certainly be prepared, and I look forward to that open house and the dialogue and the discussion and the feedback. On January 8th, we've given notice now that we would then have our formal public meeting, and that would happen, on January 8th, the notice went, and that meeting would happen on February 8th at your council meeting. Following that, I shared with the city manager today how we track the inputs that we receive. We've got an Excel spreadsheet as well as the actual document, and we track all of that. And at the end of the public process, and going back to the visioning session that we had early in 2020, we will assimilate all that, and we will bring through Community Services Committee the next draft of the official plan that describes what input did we hear, how have those comments been incorporated into the official plan, and maybe on some comments, how they're more appropriately incorporated in a different way into the work of council, maybe your strategic plan, or maybe through a more detailed master plan, such as the Castle Beach Master Plan. So those notices and processes are sort of set out. We would come back to community services likely in March with that next iteration. If council, after seeing what comes back to community services, would be more comfortable in having, a special meeting dedicated, perhaps, a half a day session to going through the official plan, you can certainly do that. But I wonder if right now, before that next report, is the time to determine that, or whether we should let the process as it's been established and approved by council carry on a few more steps. I would remind council and the public, the dialogue, the discussion that's happening is exactly what we're hoping for at this point. The fact that people care and are interested in the official plan is exactly where we wanted to be right now in terms of the process.
Scott, anything to add?
No, I think that's helpful. I'm appreciative of the opportunity that council might have then to be able to evaluate the document in a more fulsome manner, because there's a big difference between a visioning afternoon or 1 hour or half an hour meeting and a more polished document when council's able to go through line by line of 200 pages of permissive uses or perhaps restrictive uses that may not be agreeable. So, and I mean, there's climate change as well is another discussion point. So that's good at this point for me.
So I just reconfirm that on Wednesday, January 20th, there is an open house from 4 p.m. till 5 p.m. It's electronic participation, and you can research that by going to onsound.ca. So that's for the public. We can maybe have a discussion further at some point about how we get it back in front of council to understand it before we pass it. It is sometimes hard when we get something that important, that big at a council meeting as a public meeting, on a night when we're deciding 20 other things. I think that's kind of the point, but good, thank you. I've got a couple of things. Most of them have been crossed out as we've hit different things along the way. Shortly after we cut the ribbon on the 10th Street Bridge, we received a poem from Brenda Dawson, and Brenda lives in the new Sydenham building on 9th Street at the bridge and looked right up the river and was able to watch the construction from, I guess, her kitchen table or from the balcony. So she sent us a poem, which is kind of fun. Gitchi Name Wikwadong. How will we cope? The people cried. How will we get to the other side? Detours and new routes and no left turns. The city had to address so many concerns. It seems like yesterday they closed 10th Street to replace the bridge through winter cold and summer heat. Through COVID-19 that everyone feared, the work progressed, the workers persevered. It's hard to believe no more construction is going on. The workers, trucks, and equipment have all gone. Patience has paid off. The job is complete. OnSound officially opened the 10th Street. The ribbon's been cut. The traffic is flowing. No more detours. It's much easier going. Thanks to everyone involved. We appreciate all you've done. The new Gitchi Name Wikwadong Bridge will benefit everyone. So that's from Brenda Dawson. We thank her for that. That's kind of fun. So I wanted to share that. I also want to share the good news, which most of us are aware of. I have to be careful. An artist who lives locally, I was once told not to refer to local artists as local because it could be demeaning, but nationally renowned artist George McLean has recently been advised that he will receive the Order of Ontario, and that's great news. So congratulations to Mr. McLean. I had some questions as we keep receiving the notices for Roma and Good Roads. And so a question for Mr. Simmons, are we missing any opportunities? We've often gone and done delegations that is sort of hard to do when you're online to try and bring the interests and the issues of the city forward to the minister. Have you put some thought into planning for that, or are we missing any opportunities?
For you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Yeah, so I myself have registered for Roma, and I believe one member of council is also registered for Roma, so we will be participating in those virtual sessions. Of course, it is being held virtually this year. As far as that goes, from a government relations aspect, we need to work on a more robust government relations plan, and we're going to be looking at doing that through the strategic plan refresh. So when we get refocused here in the next couple months, we will look at bringing with that at a later time, how does government relations fit into that, and then look at not just our participation at Roma, AMO, FCM, et cetera, but what we should be working with the county on, and also our local politicians on a month in, month out basis. So yes, we've put some thought to it. I would tell council to look forward to a government relations strategy later this year.
That's great. Thank you. Those are all my matters from additional business. Is there anyone that forgot to put their hand up? We started? Okay, we'll keep moving. Number 18, motion that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
Thank you. And in favor, Councillor Dodd?
In favor.
Councillor Gregg?
In favor.
Councillor Hamley?
In favor.
Councillor Kepke?
In favor.
Councillor Merton?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary?
In favor.
Councillor Tamming?
In favor.
Councillor Thomas?
In favor.
So that is carried. Do we have any notices of motion? Seeing none. Bylaws?
I have a motion to it.
Miss 19, sorry. Motion to adopt proceedings in Committee of the Whole. My fault.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gregg, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole and concerning public meetings, deputations, and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business to be confirmed by this council.
And you're in favor?
In favor.
Councillor Gregg?
In favor.
Councillor Hamley?
In favor.
Councillor Kepke?
In favor.
Councillor Merton?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary?
In favor.
Councillor Tamming?
In favor.
Councillor Thomas?
In favor.
So that is carried. Now I've noticed this a motion. We had none. Now down to bylaws.
To Your Worship, the bylaws listed for approval on tonight's agenda include the confirmatory bylaw, a bylaw to adopt a reserve and reserve fund policy, a bylaw to amend the fees and charges bylaw respecting airport landing fees, a bylaw to appoint or amend terms of office for members and established boards and committees, a bylaw to declare that certain riverfront lands on First Ave East and subject to the Crown Patent are not required currently or in the future for harbor purposes, and to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute all documents necessary to transfer the lands. There are two encroachment agreement bylaws, one for 298 13th Street West and one for 300 13th Street West. A bylaw to provide for an interim levy for the year 2021 for all property classes. There's two site plan agreement bylaws, one for Alpha Street Gas Bar at 884 10th Street West and one for Grey Bruce Vet Clinic at 1393 16th Avenue East. There's a bylaw to execute an agreement with Grey County respecting street sweeping. And lastly, a bylaw to establish the city's response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gregg, that bylaw numbers 2021-001 through to 2021-012 be passed and enacted, and in favor.
So Councillor Dodd's in favor. Councillor Gregg?
In favor.
Councillor Hamley?
In favor.
Councillor Kepke?
In favor.
Councillor Merton?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Leary?
In favor.
Councillor Tamming?
In favor.
Councillor Thomas?
In favor.
So that is carried. Bylaws are approved. That completes our business for tonight. It is 8:48. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.